History is full of poisoned chalices, but in Scotland, one death became the stuff of legend. You may think you know the story of Macbeth, the ambitious general who murdered King Duncan in his sleep. But peel back the Shakespeare, and a darker tale emerges, one in which belladonna berries and poisoned drinks may have played their part. This is the story of King Duncan, Macbeth, and the deadly Nightshade. Welcome to Pete's world of poisonous plants, where the past drips with venom and even the crown of a king can be won by poison. In this second episode, we go back in time to the days of Scottish noblemen and kings and the invading Danes, when battles were fought not only with swords and shields, but sometimes with something far more treacherous, a poisoned cup. Let's start with the plant itself. Atropa belladonna, the deadly nightshade. Its berries are shiny, black, and fatally tempting. To a child, they look like sweet cherries. To an adult, they carry one of the most dangerous alkaloids known to man. Atropine, scopolamine, hyoscyamine, a cocktail that scrambles the nervous system. A handful of berries can be enough to kill a man. Eat them, and your mouth goes dry, your vision blurs, your heart pounds, and your mind slips into delirium. In small doses, it dilates the pupils, giving women in Renaissance Italy that wide-eyed look they thought seductive. In larger doses, it gives you hallucinations, seizures, and death. In Scotland of the 11th century, it may have toppled a king. The real King Duncan was not the kindly old man Shakespeare painted. He was young, in his 30s, ambitious, and not terribly good at his job. His reign was marked by poor leadership and disastrous battles. He led an army into Northumbria and was sent home with his tail between his legs. He then marched into Moray, where he met Macbeth and met his end. But here's where poison slithers into the story. Later accounts suggest that before the fatal battle, Macbeth and his men offered Duncan's troops a drink. Hospitality, they called it. But the brew may have been laced with belladonna. Imagine Duncan's soldiers, thirsty from the march, raising their cups in relief. Within the hour, their limbs grow heavy, their vision swims, their minds spin with feverish dreams. Some collapse outright, others stumble in confusion, striking at shadows. Not a fair fight, but then poison never is. Macbeth's men swept in, and Duncan's forces were crippled before the first sword was drawn. It's a theory that has haunted Scottish history ever since. Shakespeare, writing centuries later, chose daggers and witches over poison because it made for better theatre. But the whispers remained, that the true weapon was not Macbeth's blade, but the berries of deadly nightshade slipped into wine or ale. And from stories like this, another curious tradition may have been born. Even today, when we clink glasses and say cheers, it harks back to an old fear of poisoning. By crashing cups together, the liquid splashed from one into another, proving that neither host nor guest was trying to kill the other. A toast, in other words, to survival. Now imagine the symptoms on that battlefield. Soldiers retching, eyes rolling, seeing visions. Some convinced they were fighting demons, others paralyzed, unable to raise their swords. Belladonna has another cruel trick. It erases memory. Survivors would have struggled to describe what had happened, only that they were overwhelmed, their bodies betraying them. For Macbeth, the throne of Scotland was suddenly within reach. And this was not the only time belladonna stalked Scottish history. The berries were used by assassins, healers, and witches alike. Folk tales tell of warriors smearing their arrows with nightshade to bring madness to their enemies. Women brewed it into flying ointments, the source of witchcraft legends. In truth, they weren't flying. They were tripping, lost in hallucinations, convinced their souls had left their bodies. But back to Duncan. After his death, Macbeth ruled Scotland for nearly 2 decades. His reign was far more stable than Shakespeare gives him credit for, yet his legacy will always be tied to Duncan's death. Was it steel in the night, or poison in the cup? The truth may never be known, but history has room for both. Modern science gives weight to the poison theory. Belladonna is native to Scotland, and knowledge of its effects was widespread. Warriors and healers alike would have known its use. In a world without chemical weapons, it was the perfect trick, cheap, silent, and devastating. It doesn't take much to turn a battle into a massacre, and belladonna has not lost its bite. Even today, hospitals treat accidental poisonings, children picking berries from hedgerows, mistaking them for something safe, patients overdosing on eye drops and medicines made from atropine. The line between medicine and poison is as thin as a berry's skin. So the next time you think of Macbeth, don't picture daggers or witches chanting on a blasted heath. Picture a cup raised in trust, a sip of ale, a handful of poisoned berries. Picture an army undone not by courage or steel, but by a plant that still grows in our fields and gardens. And when you clink glasses and say cheers, remember, once upon a time it wasn't just a friendly toast, it was a test of loyalty and a question of life or death. History tells us that Duncan's crown was lost in battle, but perhaps the real battle was already over, long before the swords were drawn. Perhaps the throne of Scotland was tipped not by blood, but by Belladonna. And that, dear listener, is the bitter truth. Kings fall, empires crumble, and sometimes the hand that topples them isn't holding a sword. It's holding a cup. Even the sweetest drink can be death in disguise.